There was a time when I believed the hardest part of managing money was holding myself back. Not buying something I wanted and letting small impulses pass. It turned out I was wrong. The hardest part was never saying no to myself. The hardest part was having to say no to my daughter, and watching her face try to understand why. Mira was only asking for something simple, something I might have bought without much thought a few years ago. My name is Clara. That day, I realized building my family's future could sometimes feel like breaking my own heart, a little at a time. During breakfast, Mira chatted about her friends and the summer activities they were planning. Her voice filled the quiet kitchen with ordinary excitement. I smiled and poured milk into her glass. I tried to make the moment feel as easy as it looked. "A lot of my friends are going to summer camp, Mom," she said simply. She looked at me with the same easy honesty children always have. I nodded. Then I stayed quiet for a few seconds longer than I usually would. On the same table, my phone showed an emergency fund that was still far from where I wanted it to be. The number sat there without saying a word. In my mind, those two things met at the same moment. My daughter's wish and our family's sense of security pulled in different directions. Nothing was wrong with that morning. Even so, something had started to feel heavier inside me. A few days later, Mira brought home a school activity brochure. She placed it on the table as if it were just another ordinary paper. The cost was not overwhelming, but it was not small enough to ignore either. I started doing the numbers almost immediately. It happened before I even realized it. If we paid for this, our emergency savings would have to wait again. That thought stayed in my mind. If we chose not to pay for it, I worried that Mira might feel left out. That feeling was harder to measure. I tried to push that feeling aside. I kept telling myself it was not a big problem. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became that this was not really about money. It was about the guilt I carried with me. Lately, I've started noticing something about myself. Small moments seem to reveal feelings I never paid attention to before. Whenever Mira asks for something, I react before I even think. It almost feels like I'm being tested. Somehow, my answer feels bigger than the question itself, as if it decides whether I'm a good mother or not. I know that thought isn't true. Even so, knowing it doesn't make the feeling disappear. Feelings don't always move in the same direction as reason. I notice that more than I'd like to admit. I've started asking myself a quiet question. Why does saying no hurt this much? The answer doesn't arrive all at once. Slowly, I realize I want to give my daughter everything I never had. The week moved along the way it usually did. Nothing seemed different, yet I noticed myself quietly carrying the same thoughts from one day to the next. I took Mira to school, and Armand left for work. We followed the same familiar rhythm we always had. We sat down for dinner together and laughed about small things. For a little while, the evening felt completely ordinary. From the outside, everything looked perfectly fine. Anyone passing by would probably think nothing was wrong, but inside me, the same conversation kept returning. It circled through my mind even during quiet moments. I wondered if I was being too strict. I wondered if I worried about the future more than I should. Or maybe I was doing the right thing after all. The question stayed with me, waiting for an answer I did not have yet. One afternoon, Mira sat down beside me on the sofa. The quiet between us felt completely ordinary. She opened the brochure again. The corners were already a little worn from being folded and unfolded. "Mom," she said softly. I looked at her and waited for the rest. "It's okay if we don't go," she said. Her voice stayed calm as she spoke. I looked at her face. She gave me a small smile. Then she added something else. The words settled inside me before I could answer. "No, you're trying to keep our family safe," she said. I sat there quietly, holding on to those words. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what Mira had said. Her quiet words stayed with me long after the house had gone still. It wasn't sadness that stayed with me. It was a quiet feeling of being deeply moved. For so long, I thought she only noticed the things we couldn't buy. That was the story I had been telling myself. But she had been seeing something else too. She was noticing what our family was trying to build together. That was the moment something became clear to me. I sat quietly with the thought, instead of looking away from it. I realized that financial security wasn't standing against love. The two had never been separate in the first place. Maybe financial security is a form of love too. It's just the kind that doesn't always show itself today. That night, after Mira had fallen asleep, I sat down with Armin. The quiet house made the conversation feel easier to begin. I feel guilty, I admitted to him. Saying the words out loud felt different from carrying them alone. It wasn't really about the money. That wasn't the part weighing on my mind. I just wished I could give Mira more than I could right now. That feeling stayed with me as I spoke. Armand nodded without rushing to answer. He seemed to understand exactly what I meant. Then he said something I knew I would remember. The room felt very still while I listened. Sometimes we spend so much time thinking about what we can't give that we forget what we already give every day, he said. I sat quietly with his words. The next weekend, we decided to make something together. It was a quiet afternoon with no special plan beyond sitting at the table. We gave it a simple name. We called it our family joy list. It became a small list of things we wanted to do together. One idea led to another without much thought. A picnic in the park, a movie night at home, and cooking together found their way onto the page. None of the ideas were expensive. Looking at the list, that stood out to me. For the first time in weeks, I noticed a sense of relief. It arrived quietly while we were still sitting together. I stopped measuring my love by the price of things. I sat with that thought for a quiet moment. I am still learning how to say no, and it still feels difficult. Some days that small word stays with me long after the moment has passed. But now I understand something that I could not see before. Looking back, my thoughts feel a little different than they used to. Protecting our family's future does not mean loving them less. Sometimes it may be one of the biggest ways that love quietly shows itself. If this story stayed with you today, I hope you will join Clara's Family Journal. This is a place where we keep learning to build calmer, more thoughtful, and stronger families together. Nah, I would love to hear your story. What has been the hardest thing you have said no to for your child to protect your family's finances? And how did you carry that feeling of guilt?